this is Laura. Welcome to another tutorial. So today I'm going to show you how I made this necklace. Now this is more of a collar necklace, or even you could make it as a choker. And basically all you need for this are 11 O's, 8 O's, Superduos beads, and then whatever you want to put for the pendant. I'm going to show you how I bezeled this cabochon. So this is a 13 by 25 cabochon, and I did that separately. So this is going to be a lengthy video, so get a snack or a cup of coffee or something to drink. And if you're interested in learning how to make this necklace, hit the like button, come back, and we'll get started. Okay, so for this necklace, I'm going to do it in shades of blue. So right here, I've got some Superduos in a dark blue, almost navy. I've got some light blue. These are Miyuki 8 O's. And I've got some Chuck Glass 11 O's in a size 11. I'm going to be using a magnetic clasp. And I'm going to put that on with 2 wire guards, 2 jump rings, and these are the oval jump rings. I'm going to try these. And for the pendant, I'm going to make it in this blue, pretty blue and teal shade cabochon. And for bezeling the pendant, you're going to need either 1 or 2 colors of size 11 Delicas. I'm probably going to use these, but if I change my, what I want to use for the colors, I will definitely let you know. And then some 15 O's. So these are the 2 colors I'm planning on using for this, but like I said, this is going to be done in steps. And right now we're just going to get started doing the necklace part of it. So I'm going to put these out of the way. Also, I'm using 8-pound Fireline and a size 11 beading needle. You could certainly use a size 10. So we're going to start out just doing some right angle weave. I've got a stop bead at the end as well. So you're going to pick up 1 8-0, 1 11-0, 1 8-0, 1 11-0. This is what's on your needle. You're going to bring those down to the stop bead and sew them into a circle. And then I like to reinforce at least once before I move on to the next unit. Okay, so I've got my first unit together. And you should have something like this. Okay, so we've got 4 beads on, and I'm coming out of this 11-0 here. I want the 8-0s to be positioned like this. So the necklace length is going to go this way rather than this way, if that makes sense. You'll see why as I go on. So we're coming out of this 11-0, and now we've got 1 unit on, and we always share a side in right angle weave. So we're going to pick up an 11-0, or I'm sorry, an 8-0, 11-0, and an 8-0. Coming out of the bottom of this 11-0, you're going to go in through the top of that 11-0. Okay, and we've got our second unit on. And I'm just going to reinforce before I move on. Sewing up through the beads once again. It's always a little clumsy at first, but as you get your bracelet or your necklace going, it gets easier to hold your piece and to see how it's going to take shape. All right, so as I said, I'm reinforcing. I'm going to be coming up this 11-0. So we've got 2 units on, and they're sharing this 11-0 right here. So we're going to just continue the same stitch, picking up an 8-0, 11-0, and an 8-0. Coming out of the top of that 11-0, we're going to go through the bottom of that 11-0. And then reinforce. And just hold your work however is easiest for you. I'm right-handed, so I tend to hold it in my left hand, and I'll move it up and down, but, you know, just to make it easier to reinforce. But again, we want the 8-0s to be like this, not like this, just for this particular pattern. So I'm coming up this 11-0, and I'm just going to do some more rows. Pick up an 8-0, 11-0, an 8-0. Coming out of the top of this 11-0, you're going to go through the bottom. I'm going to reinforce. Coming up this 11-0. I'm just going to keep putting units on till I get the length of my necklace. And I think I'm going to make it about 16 or 17 inches long, because I like it to sit right on my collar. I'm reinforcing. Okay, so now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units on. So I'll do a couple more, and then I'm going to go off and finish the length, and then come back and show you the next step. So we've got an 8-0, an 11-0, and an 8-0. Coming out of the top of this 11-0, go through the bottom. Reinforce. Actually taking 2 beads at the same time for this pass, and then I'm going up this 11-0. Don't get your thread caught. Okay, I'll do one more. So we're coming out of this 11-0. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units on. Pick up an 8-0, 11-0, and an 8-0. Coming out of the top of this 11-0, we're going to go through the bottom. Okay, then I'm going to reinforce, do the length of my necklace, come back, and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I made the length of my necklace, which for me is 17 inches. And you'll see here that on the necklace, the 8-0s are the ones on the top and bottom of each unit, and the 11-0s are on the sides. Now, I was beading away and actually started to put on the wire guard, and I realized I wasn't filming. So what I did was I was coming up here. I made this last unit. Then I sewed up through the 8-0 and put a wire guard on. Went down through this 8-0 and then reinforced it. And then the next step to the necklace is to just put an 11-0 between all of the 8-0s. And as you can see, I've started, but I'll show you exactly what we're going to do. So you just pick up the 11-0. You're coming out of the 8-0, go into the next 8-0. And that's all you do all the way down this side of the necklace. Trying not to get caught. Okay. So here we've got, actually, like I said, I started putting them on before I realized I wasn't filming. So I'm all the way up to this point now, but I'm just going to go down the whole length of the necklace, putting an 11-0 in between the two 8-0s. And you can have fun with the colors that you want to use. You can use complementary colors. You don't have to do all the same shade. It's a lot of fun to kind of decide what you want to design. Going through just the next 8-0. Pick up an 11-0. Go through the next 8-0. Pick up an 11-0. Go through the next 8-0. And as you can see, it's starting to give just a subtle curve around the inside of the neck. And that's what happens when you put a tinier bead on this side of the necklace, the one that's facing right next to the neck. It will give it a little curve, and then on the other side, you put a bigger bead. And we're going to put in between here, we're going to put the Superduos. So let's just continue on a few more. go through that next 8-0. Get up on 11-0 and going through the next 8-0. Picking up an 11-0, going through the next 8-0. Okay, so I'm just going to do that all the way down, and then when I get to this end, I will show you what I did on this end and put the wire guard on for this side. Okay, see you in a few. Okay, so I've got an 11-0 in between each of the top 8-0s, and I've sewn all the way down to where my tail thread's coming out on this side. And I'm just going to, I'm coming out of this 8-0. I'm going to pick up the wire guard. Go through one side, bring it down. And it fits really nicely in between these two 8-0s. So you're just going to go around the guard, down the other side. Making sure the thread stays in this groove here. And then you're just going to sew up and reinforce it. Come down this side, and you're coming out of this 8-0 on the other side of the necklace. And now we're going to start adding the Superduos. So you're just going to pick up a Superduo and check your holes, make sure they're both clear, because after we go through and put the Superduos on, we're going to come in. I'll show you in a minute. And you probably have to add thread a couple of times. This is a little bit thread thirsty. So pick up a Superduo, go through the next 8-0. Okay, sorry, I had a little technical difficulty with my camera. So here we go. We're sewing a Superduo between, excuse me, each 8-0. All the way down this side of the necklace. And then we're going to come back and put a 8-0 in between the two, each of the Superduos. But I'll just do a few more. Coming out of this 8-0, just going right through the next. And that would be pretty on its own as a necklace. But I don't know that it would stay neatly. Once we put the 8-0 in between each of these Superduos, it's going to lay a lot nicer, you know, than if we didn't have it. So coming out of this 8-0, go into the next 8-0. Coming out of this 8-0, going into the next. So into every 8-0. Okay. So in the interest of time, I'm going to do one more and then go off and finish this row or this side of the necklace, and I'll come back and we'll do the next step. Okay, so I've gone around and I've put a super jewel between each 8-0, and I've sewn and come back around this first super duo right here. So now all I'm going to do is put another 8-0 in between each of these super duos. So, but before we do put an 8-0 between each super duo here, we need to count how many super duos we have in the necklace. Divide by 2, and that will give you the middle of your necklace. And this is where I found to be the middle of my necklace. I just stuck a pin just to keep something there to let me know where I need to leave this particular one open. So I'm going to sew 8-0s in between all of these super duos, but I'm not going to between these 2 beads because I've determined this is the exact middle of my necklace, and that's where our pendant's going to go. So I'm just going to take my 8-0s and I'm just going to start adding one between each super duo. Coming out of the bottom here, going to go into this next super duo. Pick up an 8-0, sew through the next super duo. Pick up an 8-0, sew through that next super duo. Pick up an 8-0, sew through the next super duo. Pick up an 8-0, sew through to the next super duo. Pick up an 8-0, sew through to the next super duo. And I'm just going to go all the way to that one opening where it's the middle of my necklace. I'm getting caught on my tool here. Hold on a second. Okay. And then I'm going to sew around and finish up the rest of the necklace. But I'm going to sew up till I get to these 2 beads here, and then I'll show you how I go around and then continue on. Okay, so I put an 8-0 in between all the super duos on this side, and I'm coming out of this super duo, but I want to leave this space open because like we did in this, or like I did in this necklace, I'm going to attach the pendant between these 2. So I'm going to need to sew around, keeping on the thread path until I'm coming out like this of that super duo. So I can I'm coming out of the bottom of the Superduo. I can go up the top and through that other 8-0. And I'm just going to have to backtrack now, keeping on the thread path. So I'm coming out of this 8-0 now. I'm going to go through let's see, I'm going to go through all of these like that. And then I'm going to backtrack through those 2 beads, the top of that Superduo. And then I'm going to go through this last 8-0 and through this Superduo this way. And then I'm just going to turn around and go through the bottom of that Superduo and continue on putting my 8-0s. So see how we left this area open here for the pendant? And I'm just going to go all the way down, sewing just like I did on this other part, adding an 8-0 between every Superduo. I'll do one more, and then I'm going to go off and finish it, and then I'll come back and show you how I bezel the cabochon. Got my thread knotted up. That happens sometimes. Okay, so this is what it looks like at the moment. We've left this very center 2 Superduos open so that we can fit in the pendant, and I'm just going to sew 8-0s in between all of these, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like and show you how I start to bezel the pendant. Now the pendant, I was going to use this one, which it looks okay, and depending on the beads that you bezel it with, it might work, but I kind of like this one with it better, the shades of blue. So I'm going to bezel this one. So I will see you in a few. Okay, so I've gone ahead and put all of the 8-0s in between the Superduos, and I'm ready to start bezeling this cabochon so that we can use it as a pendant. Now this is an 18 by 25 cabochon, and cabochons are flat on one side and curved on the other. They come in round, oval like this one, but they can be bezeled just the same way as any other stone. And for a stone of that size, I'm probably going to use about 56 11-0 Delicas. I'm going to use these 2 colors. I'm actually going to put 3 rows on of the Delicas. Usually when you're bezeling a standard peyote bezel, it's like 2 rows, and then you go in with the 15-0s. But I'm going to probably do 3 rows because just the way this is shaped, it just will grip it better. This is, you know, curved a lot and then goes flat, but you'll see as I go on. So I'm threaded my needle with probably about a wingspan and put a stop bead right in the middle. So get that done, come back, and we'll finish or start actually the bezel. Okay, so first I'm going to pick up 56. So at first I'm just going to start, grab it on like that, and then I'll count. I mean, this is a big bezel, but I have found that bezeling the bigger stones seem to be, for me, easier than smaller because I can hold it better. So let's see how many we have on here now. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 15. Okay, 16, 17, 18. Okay. Let's see. Sometimes when you're picking up a lot of beads at once, you can just kind of like put your needle through and they'll just start hopping on your needle. Okay, I'm going to count. I always double and triple check my counts because you need an even amount when you're doing a bezel. It's even count peyote. So let's see what we have. 2, 4, 6, 40, 41, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so this should be 56. I'm going to count one more time because I am just that way. Yep, 56. Okay, and then I am going to sew through that last one and sew it into a circle. And this is what you have. Okay, and you know, some stones are made smaller or bigger just by a hair or a fraction than others. So a good way to make sure that you've got the correct amount of beads is to put it around it, and it should be snug but not over tight, because we're going to bezel around doing a peyote bezel, and then we're going to be cinching it in with 15-0s. So it is going to kind of like grip the stone or capture the stone, so to speak. So here we go. We're going to start with the peyote bezel. We're coming out of this one bead, and peyote is skipping one bead and sewing into the next. So I'm going to skip this next bead, sew up through the next, and then just kind of make sure the beads are going to sit next to each other like that. So now we're coming out of the top of this bead. We're going to pick up another bead, another Delica, skip the next one and go into the very next. Like that. And then pull. Okay, as you can see, you've done 2 now. So we've got 2 sticking out. We're going to do the same thing all the way around. Pick up another Delica, skip the next bead, and skip this bead here, go through this bead, like that. Pick up another Delica, and I'm still using just the darker color blue. Then I'm going to switch over for the next row. I'm going to do the lighter color. So we're coming out of this bead here. We're going to skip that next one and sew through the next one, like that. Pick up a Delica, skip the next bead, sew into that next bead. Pick up a Delica, coming out of this bead here, this Delica here, we're going to skip this next one and sew into the next. Okay, I'm going to do that all the way around, come back and show you how to step up. Okay, so I'm getting ready to pick up my last Delica for this row. Pick it up, sew in through, skip the one bead, sew into the next, and because we're stepping up, we got to sew into this bead here. And if you can't get it the first time, just go through the one and then go through to step up. So we just added our last Delica and moved our thread to this, through this Delica, and now we're going to put our second round of Delicas on. Now I've changed my mind yet again. That happens sometimes when I'm designing. I decided the other color Delica didn't have as much of a contrast, so I'm going to use this color. You'll be able to see what I'm doing better too. So coming out of this Delica, just sew into the next sticking out Delica. And now it's easier because you know you just need to put another bead in between each bead. So pick up another Delica, sew into the next Delica, which is sticking up. Pick up a Delica, sew into the next. Pick up a Delica, sew into the next darker blue Delica. Pick up a Delica, sew into the next sticking up Delica. Pick up a Delica, sew into the next. And you got the picture. I'm just going to go all the way around, step up again, and put one more round of the darker blue on. Okay, so I've sewn around and I'm getting ready to put my last lighter blue Delica on. And we're going to put it into the next sticking out bead, which is this bead. And because we're stepping up, we're also going through that next Delica, which is the lighter color Delica. And that sets me up to put my last round of Delicas on. So I'm going to pick up the darker one now and then sew through each of the lighter colored Delicas. Pick up a Delica, go through the next sticking out Delica. Pick up a Delica, go through the next sticking out Delica. Pick up a Delica, go through the next sticking out Delica. Pick up a Delica, go through the next sticking out Delica. And I'm going to go all the way around, step up, and show you how to start adding the 15-ohs. Okay, so I've gone around and put my third row of Delicas on, and now it's time to add some 15-ohs. And as you can kind of see how it's going to start taking shape over the cabochon. And I think I misspoke on my intro. This is an 18 by 25 millimeter cabochon, not a 13. If I said 13, I apologize. So now we're going to pick up a 15-oh, and we're going to sew a 15-oh through every dark blue Delica. And I usually put 2 to 3 rows of 15-ohs on. So just pick up a 15-oh, go through the next Delica, and as little by little, it's going to cinch this in. And eventually, we're going to have a nice bezel around this cabochon. So I'll show you a few more. Picking up a 15-oh, just going through that next sticking out Delica. Pick up a 15-oh, go through the next sticking out Delica. Okay, I'll do a few more, and then I'm going to go off and do all the way around and show you how I step up. So you're always adding between these two Delicas. Okay, I'm going to finish up, come back, and step up and do the next row. Okay, so I've sewn around, and I'm getting ready to put my last 15-oh on in between the Delicas. I'm going to pick my 15-oh up and sew through that next sticking out Delica. And then because you want to step up, you're going to go through that next 15 and pull. And that sets you up to put on another row of 15s. And what I've done, remember how we put a stop bead in the center of our wingspan of Fireline? I've taken the stop bead off and threaded that part of the thread, and I'm going to start putting 15-ohs in between the Delicas on this side. I like to switch off because that keeps the tension a little bit more even on each side. So basically, we're going to do the same thing on this side. Let's see, what am I coming out of now? I'm coming out... I think I'm coming out of this Delica. I'm going to sew up through the next Delica. And I'm going to start putting 15-0s between all the Delicas on this side. Move this over. So just we're doing the same thing on this side as we did on the other. Picking up a 15-0, sewing through that Delica. Picking up a 15-0, sewing through the next sticking out Delica. Like that. Pick up a 15-0, sew through the next Delica. And you can see how it's starting to curve and how it's going to hug the stone once we get enough rows of 15s on. Okay, so I'm going to go around and then come back and set myself up to put another row of 15s on. Okay, so I've sewn 15s through all of the Delicas. I'm putting my last one on. So I'm coming out of this Delica. I'm going to go in through that next sticking out Delica. And when you get to the end, you got to really look closely because you're going to want to go through that 15-0 to step up. So I'm going to do that. And now I'm set to put on another row of 15s between each of these 15s. But I'm going to switch sides again, and I'm going to see if I can, how the stone is fitting in. And this is where it gets a little dicey, okay? This is where you try to, well, capture the stone, so to speak. So I'm coming out of this 15-0. I've switched sides. I am going to start, putting 15-0s in through each of the 15-0s that I just put on. And like I said, it's a little clumsy when you're first doing a new part, but it'll get better as you start sewing in the 15s. Okay, so I'm going to pick up a 15, and I'm going to hold the stone like this, and I'm coming out of this 15. I'm going to sew in through that next 15, and I'm going to kind of try and just gently pull in like that. I'm going to pick up another 15. I'm coming out of this 15. I'm going to put another 15 in between these two. And when I pull, I'm going to gently tug inward. You know, you don't want to pull your beads out of place, but it needs to be snug. So I'm coming out of this 15-0. I'm going to sew a 15-0 through that next sticking out 15-0. And little by little, it's going to hug the stone. Okay, so I'm coming out of this 15-0. I'm going to go into the next one. And if you're holding it and your stone falls out, don't worry about it. You can always put it back in and continue on. It takes a few tries. So I'm going to go all the way around and then put myself in a position to put on another row and go on the other side and I'll be back to show you how I put 15s on the other side. All right, so I've sewn around. I'm putting my last couple of 15-0s on between the Delicas. And I apologize, I realized I was a little bit out of frame on some parts of the last segment, but I'm a work in progress, and I'm trying. So you're coming out of this 15-0, you're going to go through the next 15-0 and give a gentle tug inward. Okay, we're going to pick up our last 15-0 for this row. Coming out of this 15-0, going to sew into the next and through that row, that 15-0 that's started the second row. So we're going to go, and if you can't get it both in one stitch, you can go through one bead and then the next. So that's what it's going to look like to step up. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to put one more round of 15-0s on this side. Okay, so the bezel is still a little loose because we've still got some work to do, so I'm going to turn it over. It's a possibility that your stone will come out as you're, tightening the bezel up. And just pop it back in and continue on. So I'm coming out of this 15-0 on the other side now, the round side. I'm going to pick up a 15-0. Go through the next 15-0. I'm going to go a little slower so you can see exactly what I'm doing, because I know I was out of frame, like I said in the last segment. So we're coming out of this 15-0. We're going to put another 15-0 in between these two. And I know this has been a really long video, so if you made it to the end, give me a thumbs up in the comment section. And let me know if you'd like me to focus a couple more videos on the bezeling process, the peyote bezel. I can certainly do that. Can make a bracelet with several stones together or more pendants. Okay, we're coming out of this 15-0. We're going to sew into that. And as you do so, you give it a little tug inward. And as you do bezels over and over again, you'll get to feel the feeling of what works for you. Trust me, when I first started doing bezels, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't even know how I continued. But I did, and I'm glad I did. And every once in a while, I'll still have problems with a smaller stone because for some reason it's harder for me to handle and keep the beads snug and the tension right for me when I'm doing a smaller stone. I'm going to pick up a 15. Coming out of this 15, going into the next, sticking out 15, pull, kind of pull in, and your bezel should be slowly tightening up. But in the end, if we're done putting on all of the rows of 15-0s that we want, you can always sew around on the diagonal through the thread path to tighten it up. Okay, coming out of this 15, I'm going to go through that one. Okay, I'm just going to finish up this row and then I'll be back. Okay, so I sewed around and now I'm on my third row of 15 O's. And I'm making a little bit of a scalloped edge, as you can kind of see the points. All I'm doing for this final row of 15 O's on the back side, I'm going to pick up a 15 O, sew through the next 15 O and the next 15 O, like that. And that gives it a star effect while adding another row of 15s. So we're coming out of this 15. We're going to go into the next 15 and the following 15. So pick up a 15, go through the next 15 and the next one. So go through 2 15s. Pull inwards snugly. Pick up a 15. Go through the next 2 15s like that. Pick up a 15. Go through the next 2 15s. Pick up a 15, go through the next 2 15s. Pick up a 15, go through the next 2 15s. Whoop, it's not wanting to go through that. Like that. We're coming around the end. One more. Go through the next 2 15s. Trying to stay in frame here. Coming out of this one, go through the next 2. All right, I might have to do it separately. Go through 1. Then I'm just gonna go through 2. This last one, like that. Now, if we were gonna put another row on, which I don't think I've ever done 4 rows, but we would have to step up. But this is what the back looks like, how it's scalloped. And I'm gonna do the same thing to the front, and then we'll come back and I will continue on. Okay, so here's our finished bezel of the cabochon, and that's the back, the flat part, and it's got the little star design on both sides. And I sewed my one thread in, and the other I've sewed around till I'm coming out of this delica right here. Coming out of this delica, and we're going to do something called stitch in the ditch. We're going to pick up an 11-0, go through the next delica in that row right there. Now this is closer to the back side than the front side. pick up another 11-0, go through the next Delica there. So now we have 2 11-0s on, and how I figured out this is the center of, I just kind of eyeball it to do the center of this pendant, because we're going to sew around and come back through this 11-0 and put a 3mm pearl in between these two. So I'm just going to follow the thread path, go around, just sewing through the beads. Gonna go up this little 15-0 here. Up. And I'm following the thread path, and the thread path I can change directions and sew right through that 11-0 like that. Whoop. Like that. And then we're just going to pick up our 3mm and sew from this 11-0 to this 11-0. And then that's basically where we're attaching right here to the necklace. So I'm just going to reinforce a couple of times. Staying on the thread path. Going back up, changing directions again. And when I'm happy that I've sewn it in well enough, I'm going to sew it in between these two Superduos. So I'm going to, let's see, what could I do here? I could probably go right in through this way and then sew around. Keeping in the thread path. And I'm just going to sew through this Superduo on the bottom like that, and then go back and sew through that 11-0. I'm going to have to do it one at a time. The 11-0, the pearl, the 11-0, and then through the bottom of this Superduo, and I can even go up a few more beads, staying in the path, thread path. So now we've attached the pendant to the necklace. So I'm gonna reinforce, come back, and we'll put the clasp on. So in the interest of time, I've already attached one end of the clasp, and I've got my oval jump ring. I'm gonna do the other side, and it opens up in the middle, the oval ones. So we're gonna open that up, same way like a door. Thread it through one part of the clasp, through the wire guard, and close it on up. And there we go. Here's our blue version of the bronze necklace. So I hope this video was helpful, and I hope you learned some new techniques. If you did, I'd love it if you'd hit the like button, subscribe, and ring that bell, and you'll be notified of every time I upload a new video. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.